Good morning, everyone. This is John McDermott with AIVRTTAC here in Flagstaff, Arizona. We're on Northern Arizona University's campus at the Institute for Human Development. Welcome to today's talking circle with the topic of grant management. We'll be running through some slides here, but prior to that, I want to do a little housekeeping. If you see at the bottom of your window a chat icon and a participant icon, you can click on either one of those. And to the right of your window, or it could be a floating window, you'll see both the participants and the chat area show up. If you want to exit the full screen mode, you can go to the top where you'll see view options and you can exit full screen. At that time, your screen will resize and then you can move it anywhere you'd like for your viewing purposes. That being said, the chat window should show up on your lower right. We're asking participants to add their program name, their name and title, and a tribe's greeting in that chat area. This will serve as a potential introduction later on. We'll let our presenters, Carol Berquist and Gerald Joseph, take over soon. But just to start off, if you could add your name, your title, your program name, and your tribe's greeting to that chat area, and we'll have it on record. FYI for everyone, this is being recorded so we can archive it and we can refer back to it. We'll have that posted either on our website or AIVRTTAC's YouTube channel, and you'll be able to come and see this presentation again. So next slide, we just want to go through some general guidelines for sharing through Zoom. And as a member of the audience, if someone is speaking and you have a question, you can type that question into the chat box. We'll be monitoring that chat box. So we'll be able to bring your questions forward. If we do miss a question, since the chat box can become populated a bunch, please do not hesitate to chime in and ask us these questions again.
John, this is Suzanne. I'm having trouble finding the chat box. I have at the bottom of the screen, I have all these different activities, and when I hit chat, it doesn't show up on the right-hand side as you're saying. How do I get the chat box to appear?
You can go up to the top part of your screen under View Options.
Yes.
And you can exit full screen.
I did that.
Okay.
Kelly's here. I mean, Casey's. Kelsey's here. She's here, so she'll help me. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So please participate either by writing or verbally over the phone line or your computer audio. All questions are meaningful to us and important to the community at large. So please do not hesitate to be involved in this conversation. Last bullet point, be involved and in the moment. We thank you very much for participating today. I'm going to hand this off to Gerald, and he's going to come in and we're going to start this presentation. And just for those that might not have heard, this is being recorded for us to archive. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you, John, for starting us off. We appreciate that, and welcome to everyone out there in the AIVRS community. We see that we have about 29 people logged in right now, and we see that your introductions are coming online. Hello to Marsha Riley. I'm going to try to say your greeting here, Kamai. Myrna Warrington from Menominee, Poso, Casey Bird from Choctaw. We have Megan Taylor and Gwen Carley, Erica Camaro, Joanna. Hello, Joanna, the Apache tribe of Oklahoma. Tony Whitman from Coeur d'Alene, Ruby Prowell, Melissa Skenendor, Shelly Jacobs, Sharon from New York. Then we have Adrienne from Delaware Nation, and then Suzanne. So thank you, everyone. I just want to give you a quick greeting in my language. Loloma, kwakwai mayet, so soyam saval tota paitam ovi highlight today. Basically, thank you for everyone coming together to join us today. It makes us very happy. Welcome to the first AIVRTTAC Talking Circle hosted by the American Indian Vocational Rehabilitation Training and Technical Assistance Center, AIVRTTAC. I'd like to recognize our AIVRTTAC team, Dr. Lee Geshyama, who is our AIVRTTAC Director, VR Specialist Suzanne Molson, our outreach coordinator and IT person is John McDermott, who you just heard a few minutes ago. Our graduate student worker, Kelsey Vaughn, big shout out to Kelsey for helping us pull this together today. And our two principal investigators, Kelly Roberts and Tom Uno. And then of course our administrative assistant, Jesse Zakowski. We also have content experts who currently serve as directors for AIVRTTAC programs, one of which is facilitating our discussion today, and who I will introduce in a bit. So I just want to quickly go through this slide with you and share with you the purpose of our AIVRTTAC Talking Circle. When colleagues with the same intent share their knowledge, experience, and insight with each other, what occurs is growth and change to move forward. So for AIVRTTAC programs, the change is through the cultivation of innovative and culturally appropriate vocational rehabilitation practices that really can influence program performance and employment outcomes for the consumers we serve. With that said, the purpose of the Talking Circle is to bring all of you together and provide a venue that promotes the growth and knowledge of the community to provide exemplary vocational rehabilitation services to the AIVRTTAC consumers. Who should attend? Of course, the full AIVRTTAC community, including program directors and staff, are invited. And then we had noticed as we were sending out the invitations that we don't have emails. As we know, there are some changes in our programs. So for those of you online right now, if we don't have email addresses for any of your staff or new directors, please share that information with us. We would be very happy to receive that and update our mailing list here. What topics will be covered? Hi, good morning. We're asking everyone, if you're just logging on, we're asking everyone to include their name, their program name, and then a greeting in their tribal language, if you have that, in the chat box to the right of the screen. So looking at what topics will be covered, we're looking at doing this on a quarterly basis. We will discuss topics that are relevant to AIVRTTAC programs that can include, for instance, today's topic, grant management, case management, data collection and reporting, personnel development, among other topics that are determined by you, the AIVRTTAC community. Really, we are looking at utilizing the Talking Circle as your community in terms of how you take ownership of it and inform what those topics should be. So moving on to slide 5. The oral...
Can I say something real quick?
You sure can.
I'm sorry, this is Marsha Riley. Our computer had, the power had went out on our computer or in the building, but our phone is still working, so I'm able to still hear you. I just wanted to let you know.
Okay.
I won't be able to see your screen.
Okay, that's okay. We'll send the PowerPoint out. It'll be posted on our website as soon as we're done here. So please, for those of you who are listening through the phone, you will have access to this information. We also will have a audio script, as John had mentioned, saved and on our website. So you'll be able to access this after the presentation. Thank you, Marsha.
Thank you.
So looking at our oral traditions, as you know, we all have our oral traditions, and respecting that concept of sharing knowledge in our communities The following principles and values will guide the talking circle process. So starting with respect, we really want to demonstrate respect with our brothers and sisters, all of you out there coming from your individual tribal traditions, with your knowledge and your leadership systems. Looking at kinship, we want to look at valuing our relationships built on honesty and trust. Looking at community of practice, including activities and discussions that generate learning and building capacity of the AIVRTTAC community. Redistribution is very important in our communities in the sense that through our talking circles, we would really encourage redistributing the knowledge gained among AIVRTTAC community members who aren't able to join us today. Cultivating the interest and learning goals of the community. Practice, sustaining the AIVRTTAC best practices, skills, methods, and tools for implementation that are culturally relevant for your community. And responsibility. Recognizing that we want to identify and accept our roles respectively and shared responsibility to continue teaching and sharing the knowledge of AIVRTTAC services. And lastly, recognition. All of you participating today, recognizing that you are a member of our unique community of providing AIVRTTAC services, and it's been so for quite some time. So recognition goes a long way, and thank you to each of you for joining us today. We are now sitting at 32 participants. For those of you who are just logging on, we ask that you include an introduction. If you are accessing our webinar or our talking circle through the Zoom, there's a chat box to the right. Include your name, your program name, and a tribal greeting. So thank you, everyone. And at this time, I'd like to move on to the next slide. John? Today we have Dr. Carol Berquist. Thank you, Dr. Berquist, for being our facilitator today. She's received her PhD and Masters of Arts degrees from the Michigan State University in Rehabilitation Counseling, where she also completed an administrative program in special education. Her bachelor's degree was granted from the University of Wisconsin in special education. Carol has provided services to the Hannahville Indian community since 1988 and has a solid working relationship with tribal leaders, members, program directors, and staff, and outside agencies. And she's currently the director of her tribal vocational rehabilitation program, Hannahville's Project Visions program. So Carol, I welcome you, and at this point, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Megwitch Darrell, thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is Carol. I'm very excited to be here today to work with you on the talking circle. And I was very honored to be asked to facilitate a talking circle. And once I accepted, then I was got nervous about how is this talking circle going to work when we're using a very different kind of format from any talking circle that I have participated in the past, which generally is an actual circle of people in the same room, in a circle, looking at each other with, like purpose in mind, as Darrell explained, but very, very different from trying to do this where we aren't seeing each other and we're doing it electronically from across the country. But given that, I'm very excited to do this, and I think the idea of carrying on the talking circle on different concepts where we can all select to call in and participate from our own programs and offices wherever we are. And so I did accept the challenge, and so the challenge includes all of you helping me make this a success today as we share, because when I looked at the list of people that were participating, I was very much impressed. And we have quite a list of people that had signed on for the talking circle, including a lot of program directors and a lot of other staff as well. So I think this is going to provide a really good learning opportunity. And I did ask through a special prayer today with our cultural leader to he did a blessing for our event ahead, as our tradition is here at Hannahville, and that it would proceed in a good way. And I thank him for that. Miigwech. So in preparing for today, I did come up with like 6 discussion points, and they're very broad. I did review the questions that were submitted by participants, and they did have to do with several different aspects of grant management. And so I just came up with like 6 points that I think that are important, and we can talk about each point as we go. And as you can see from the first one that's now on your screen, that it is very general. And I will say that in the beginning of the AVIR's programs, back when I was first funded in 1995, most of us wrote our own proposals, and then we were the director if we got funded. That's kind of the way it worked. But since that time, we've grown and things have changed. And nowadays, people are often hired in to be a project director or a program manager that had really nothing to do or no involvement in the actual writing of the proposal. And that's been true for many programs. So the first discussion point that I would like people to respond to is on your screen, and it's the tribe's approved and funded AVRS grant proposal is their 5-year service contract. Is there someone who would like to share some comments about that discussion point?
This is Suzanne, and I'm thinking about my personal experience as a director. The first grant that I walked into, I was not aware of. I wasn't the one writing the grant, so I can relate to those of you out there that that didn't have any part in it, and I read it very thoroughly. I contacted my project officer for some guidance because there were some things in it that were going to be difficult to achieve. And the journey was, I found, trying to incorporate all of those new learnings about this grant and how to make it work in the community. It was a pretty challenging experience, and I did reach out to the AIVRS community. It wasn't called AIVRS at that time, but that was some of my experiences. I'd like some of you out there that have walked into the program without any knowledge of a grant, or it took you a while to figure out that there was a grant proposal. So I know you have voices. Let's hear them. Yay. Join us.
Thank you, Suzanne. Is there anybody that would like to share about how they first started with their grant proposal?
Are you all on mute by any chance? Megan, I see you're on mute. Megan Taylor?
Yeah, I'm not on mute anymore.
Okay.
Well, okay, Megan, I think Megan, you just got called out.
Great.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the video that was. Oh, well, anyway, you're not on mute, so let's hear. I know you run a good program.
How we got started with our grant proposal?
Right. Well, how did you get started? And what was your experience, I guess? Just briefly share.
Was the grant
it was already written.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, by the previous director.
And so what was your experience going through it, and did you find challenges that you might, that was difficult? Did you have a conversation with the former director? What was some of
No,
your
actually,
feelings?
I started, she was in a car accident, and then like 6 months later, they posted her position. So I was already familiar with the grant before I came back as the director. I was a counselor for 4 years, so that helped. But when I was a counselor, I did read the previous grant, and that helped when I started.
Mm-hmm. What were
Yeah,
some
thank
of
you, Megan.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Well, I was going to ask,
Thank you for sharing.
Come on.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to share something about their grant proposal?
Hi, this is Shelley.
Hi,
Hey,
Shelley.
Shelley.
I came in 3 years ago to take the manager's position. I was here 13 years before that as a counselor, so it was a total different perspective, and came in with all these great ideas on how we're really going to boost our voc rehab, and it's like shot down because I didn't write the grant. So it's like,
Right.
make sure you follow the grant. So it's like really reading it to make sure and to ensure that everything you said was going to happen did happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it really keeps you on your toes when you didn't write it.
Right. Yes, that presents some challenges as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's my input.
Well, I will add, from my perspective, I actually wrote the proposal, and when I got the proposal word that we were funded, I'm like, oh my gosh, now we have to do what we said we were going to do. So there are challenges both ways. When you look back at, when you're writing a proposal, sometimes you promise things and you're going to do this and this and this, and then the reality sets in of implementation. So, from either perspective, I think there's some really interesting stories out there about how people started with their grant proposal, and some people weren't aware that they had a grant proposal when they actually got hired. I've heard those stories too.
I'm curious, one of the things, this is Suzanne, about the goals and objectives in terms of the population that you're going to provide services, the numbers. Like your proposal said, we will serve this many, and like 50, and we will have 25 employed. Did any of you find that particular piece? That was one of my major challenges when I first started, was that the numbers were really skewed so arbitrarily that it was really something that I really needed to work with the project officer. Anybody else? And how do you follow it through if you didn't create the numbers? Are the numbers really skewed for you, or are you able to reach the numbers?
This is Christopher, Spokane Tribe. That's exactly what I was about to say. So I came in in year 3 of our first grant. I've been here a year and a half, and our grant proposal was very ambitious, maybe a little bit unrealistic, but written in a vacuum, it's hard to know how many people you're really going to reach until you try. So the advice I've been given by some other folks who've been doing this a long time is basically, when you write your next 5-year grant, make sure you show growth from where you are now. But I'm fairly certain RSA has seen this before, where someone writes the grant proposal, the original one being a bit too ambitious. And I think where my confusion so far has been that in previous quasi-governmental work, if your funder says, I'm going to fund you at about half of what you asked for, normally I've experienced where there's like a negotiation of, okay, well, I promised X, Y, and Z deliverables in my grant proposal, but if I'm only getting, 50% of the money that I said I needed to do that, I should be able to scale back some of the deliverables that I promised. So everything I can tell from our grant is that there was no discussion of that. So all of the deliverables that were put in the grant proposal are still there with RSA. And if it was already ambitious at a higher dollar amount, it's certainly unreachable at the lower dollar amount that we were awarded. So anyhow, I feel like we're just doing the best we can at making sure we are in compliance and following proper procedures, let alone reaching our targets.
Christopher, you raised some very good points there, and I think that does happen. We sometimes overpromise and we're forced to underdeliver by circumstances but beyond our control. And but yet again, this is the contract that the tribe actually made with the federal government for delivery of our services. So that's a challenge to us unless we move ahead and try to get some change going there, and which I'm sure you have done through working with your project manager and talking about, your numbers and that sort of thing.
Carol, this is Suzanne. I have a question for you. When you're talking about the 5-year service contract, and you just mentioned it now, how does that play out? How do you see that? Can you give us a little guidance in that language and how it relates to the federal government, the tribal nation, and a program within the tribal nation?
Well, for our tribe, and I think most tribes have many federal grants, and they may have other grants with the Department of Education or with the Services Administration. So we have our own internal Hannibal protocols for how we operate grants and our communication, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But one thing I've always appreciated, and we've had our grant for a number of years, since 1995, is that I have never had a grant where I've worked on that's had so much open communication with the funding source. And I think that over the years of operation, that I have always felt that my project officer wasn't just a name and a phone number in Washington, D.C. that I would never call. They would call us, they would talk with us, we would have conference calls periodically scheduled. We have the conferences that we all go to, and so we're kind of like a family, and they were part of our family too. So I think that's the piece that has been really unusual, and I don't think that my experience is different from those of other tribes out there that have enjoyed a really good relationship with RSA over the years. And it is intimidating when you think that, I have not also worked on many grants that are 5 years. Usually they're maybe 3 years or 2 years, especially for the start when you're starting up a grant. And I think having that 5-year service contract really allows time for the tribe to develop and implement a program, because it does take time to do that, as I'm sure other people can talk about as well. And I do see some other names on here of a person that's actually done this much longer than I have, and one is Connie Berg. And I'm wondering, Connie, would you feel comfortable in sharing some of your perspectives on Red Lake?
Yeah, definitely. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. And we have been in operation since 1992. We do have, when we started, it was a 3-year grant, and it was changed to 5 years. We have an outstanding working relationship with the people out in DC. They're so available for any questions that we have. I know we've got the 121 listserv, and we've got a number of directors out there that know regulations like the back of their hand. But we contact our grants monitoring officer and immediate response. They make sure that we understand. When we do have a question, they make sure that we understand the response, sometimes how they come up with that response, and make sure that we thoroughly understand everything that they are explaining to us. I think part of the reason why I've spent all of this time in vocational rehab is because of the grant monitoring officers. I mean, they make things so much easier in operating a federally funded program. They just make things so much easier, and open communication. And now, after so many years in voc rehab, we know what to expect. We know when reports are required. We know when grant deadlines are, and when we have a question, we know who we can just pick up the phone and call. So I appreciate that so much.
I know when Connie and I were started, there were fewer grants and more project officers. Wouldn't you agree, Connie?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And so, I mean, Connie was a mentor to me, which I think is so cool that we're still in this together. And, you know, that now I know it's harder because there's 2 project officers and 80-some programs. And I think when we started, there were maybe 20 programs and like 4 project officers. So we had some undivided attention there.
I remember, too, that they were going by regions at that time. And we were the first program in all of Region 5, and now that I see the program expansion, it's so I love voc rehab. I love what voc rehab can do for the clients that we serve, and I would love to help other tribes get more involved, and actually secure funding, federal funding for vocational rehab. I just wish they had more funding available for all tribes. You know, I'm sorry to say that the competitive nature of the federal funding is the only thing that I have not I don't, that's the one part of the program that I don't like. I don't like seeing tribes fighting over funding. I don't like seeing that. But
because the process makes us competitors for limited dollars, and that's really hard because we aren't competitors, we're friends.
That's right.
Colleagues. And I wonder if, I know Gloria was going to be on the call today too, but I haven't seen if she is or not. But she and Connie and I were in Region 5, from the initial people that were funded. I thought maybe Gloria would have some perspective to share.
Hi guys, I've been on mute.
Oh, she's here.
You're not a mute person, Gloria.
Normally I'm not. I'm had a very bad cold, so it's a little hard to talk today. But just nothing really to add what you've all said. We were funded 1998, and our grant person from our tribe wrote our grant. So it took 3 to 6 months to get us hired. Bill and I came on as director and counselor. And that was a very difficult process. It took a long time. And in the meantime, of course, we had heard of vocational rehab, but it never affected or applied to the reservation. So we did a lot of research, and we started with the state. What do you guys do? How are you serving? And then we grew into this is who we are, and very important is a cultural component. So we did change, I believe, I've been writing ever since, and we did change quite a few of the goals. And I think that's all I had to add.
Hey, is there anybody else that wanted to add anything about this particular discussion point? And it will come back to this anytime. The discussion is open. I just put these in for some guidance.
Actually, I'm glad that she mentioned the cultural component, because Red Lake is very strong on that. We're very strong on it.
One thing nice that we've been able to do is visit each other's programs. And for those of you that haven't had that opportunity, and I know it's sometimes hard to do that with funding, but it really is beneficial to go visit another tribe and visit their voc rehab program and see how that's implemented in their community, and also see their community. Yeah. I thought we were rural till I went to Red Lake. Right, Connie?
Right.
Okay, John, I'm wondering if you can move on to point 2.
Slide number 8.
Okay, well, as our our narrative and our insurances and things that we have with our grant proposal is our kind of contract to what we're going to do. Our grant budget is also our 5-year spending plan. And like the narrative part of our proposal, it's hard to project 5 years out, particularly when you're just starting or starting your first grant or early on in that, exactly how this is going to look. And I'm wondering if someone has some particular experiences about their budget that they would like to share.
I'm sorry, I wasn't fully focused. What was the question on the budget?
Well, if like we have it, like our grant proposal, this is our 5-year plan. And how did that change for you at all, Connie? Or how did you know, when you wrote your first grant or your first couple grants or any grant that sometimes you get something in the middle and this 5-year plan isn't exactly working anymore? How,
well, when it comes to like grant management as far as budgeting goes, we have definitely seen a greater need for monies, because the more people that know about voc rehab, the more people are going to come in and ask for help, and that is a costly venture without a doubt. I think it's one of the reasons why new programs have carryover, because a lot of people don't understand the nature of vocational rehab, nor do they understand a lot about what vocational rehab really can offer an individual. So individualized. So it's like open, and it all has to be planned. Obviously, if it's not in the individual plan, then it should not be considered. But as far as services, but with the budget part of the vocational rehab program, there's a greater need for dollars. It was just this last program year that we had to request additional funding above what we had already been authorized, and it was approved and we received it, and we had to have a supplemental plan in place on how we were going to spend it. It was provided to us like the last month of a fiscal year, so they gave us permission at the authorization time to be able to carry it over and use it into the next program year, but we would have to just write a statement that it was going to be carryover funding. And I had to do the carryover because we were notified like 3 or 4 days before the end of a grant period, and I don't spend money that fast. So, okay, then the one thing I really appreciated, our tribe involved vocational rehab in Laserfish. It's a electronic purchase order process system. We were all manual. We've gone into, we were like the one of the test programs. And if we were able to understand it and didn't have any real glitches, then the tribe made the decision to purchase the software and use it with all programs. Now everybody uses Laserfish. I was involved in the establishing protocol, but also after all of the tribal programs came on board, we had another meeting where, okay, what doesn't this program do that you need to have done as far as the keeping track of program budgets and being able to go in and print a report to see exactly where you're at. Your information is tied in exactly with the accounting departments. You're on the same system. I had not only was there the approval capacity, but also I was able to go in and write some of the reports that other people were not able to write. And that's what we have been using now for the last 3 years, and it's made my life so much easier. So if you guys want to go electronic, it really is simple. There's a brief training time period where you're getting to know the system, but really it's amazing.
This is Suzanne. Thank you, Connie. Connie, one of the experiences personally and out in the field is that sometimes the carryover is not based on what the project director or manager is doing or not doing. Sometimes it's the tribal nation itself in terms of interpreting the grant and might put a freeze on spending, either spending directly for direct services to a consumer, or what they might put a freeze on, for instance, salary, hiring, salary increases if it's already in the budget, and travel, which are all really high dollar items. And that is, you mentioned carryover, Connie, and that was one of the things that I thought of, that a lot of times, I'm reiterating this, but a lot of times it's not really, it doesn't all fall totally on the director or manager of a program. Sometimes there are those other circumstances, and it creates a big challenge, especially if you're being asked to keep writing. One of the things is to create a carryover budget to demonstrate to the federal government and the tribal government how you are going to spend down the money. So carryover is a challenge, and it's a situation you really don't want to be involved in. Thank you.
Carol, this is Daryl jumping in here. I just got a message from Gail, who brings up an important point about when programs are flat funded, the impact that has on budgeting. Could you bring that up and pose that to the group? Any comments?
Yes, certainly, and this is a huge problem. I mean, we've been flat funded now for like 8 years in our grant personally. And right now I'm at the end of, FY 2018, and now we're looking at 2019. I just was talking to my staff about this is going to be even a tighter year, because our bottom line has stayed the same, but other things have increased, like staff salaries, health benefits, and that sort of thing. So that's experience I personally had. What are others experiencing, and how are you dealing with this flat funding and with the increasing cost of services?
Carol, this is Connie in Red Lake, and that's one of the reasons why we had to request additional funding, is because of that. Our costs are going up. I'm actually one of our rehabilitation counselors has retired, and I'm actually thinking about dropping that position altogether and using those dollars for, and that requires approval, that requires a change, and it's something that I'm considering.
Thank you, Connie, for sharing that. Well, how about other people? What are you doing to meet these challenges? Gail, did you have something specific? Or go ahead.
Oh, this is Gloria again. I'm glad Connie brought that up too, because as in flat funding, that's quite critical, the top part of our grant, before we even touch anything. So everything else kind of gets more expensive and we have less money to deal with. But having said that, we lost our VRTTAC here, and I emailed Sonia. This has been almost 2 months going back and forth now. Could, at least for the end of, we have 1 more year to go, could I not fill this position? And she emailed, it takes a long time to get an answer back. And finally emailed back, well, is this going to affect the scope and goals and responsibilities of your program? So emailing back and forth, it's taken a significant amount of time. And then I was denied that request. So I resubmitted it and said, we have already put 3 of us down to part-time due to this budget and the level of flat funding. I don't know, we can barely squeak by if this will happen, but I went ahead with our finance officers and done a PAF to move our admin up position /admin /VRTTAC, so we can compensate her a little better and move her up to 40 hours. And I don't know if Sonia's going to buy that or not, but still waiting for an answer, and it's well over a month.
Oh, that's what we're doing.
Claire, thank you for sharing. Gail, did you have something you wanted to talk specifically about, or? I'm not sure. Can Gail interact or not?
She doesn't.
Gail doesn't have a speaker, it looks like.
Oh.
I'm not sure.
How frustrating. Okay. Is she,
Gail, if you would like, you can call into the meeting as well on your phone line. Maybe someone can send her the information via email.
okay, because she said, I guess I see on here now, she said when flat funded had to scale back our activities, is what she said. And I know we're looking at like travel to KNR, for example. Is that something we're going to be able to continue to do, or is it something maybe one person goes instead of two? That kind of thing too.
Okay, this is Connie in Red Lake. That's another thing that we have done. We've cut travel. We've got access to training online. We have access to training at the local level through our tribal college. So we don't participate in, that's why I'm not at KNR ever. I used to be there all the time, and I haven't been to one now since New York. That's quite a while ago.
I remember that. It was Niagara Falls.
Yeah, that's the last time I was to KNR. And it was partly budget.
We continue to go to KNR, but we take turns.
All right, let's move on to discussion point 3, and then we have another item. We'll come back to the budget too. So
slide number 9.
Okay. What we say in our grant proposal, when you look back at your grant proposal and those goals and objectives that either you wrote or somebody else wrote that we're now responsible to achieve, I mean, we're monitored on these throughout the 5-year, the 1 year, and then the 5-year grant process. And those are monitored by RSA through what we write to them in our reports in terms of goals, objectives, and our outcomes to be achieved. And I think, Christopher, you talked a little bit about this earlier, but there's some other input is what happens, and we're talking right now about budget, well, in effect, a budget reduction because we're flat funded, and other things we can have no control over are increasing. So how has this impacted, and what are you doing about goals and objectives and our outcomes to be achieved? Are you able to meet those? Are you doing modifications? I'd like to know what other people are doing.
I would like to comment on that because I think we run an outstanding voc rehab program here in Red Lake. Like I said earlier, I love voc rehab. What we have done is, okay, like we don't only work with the employers, we work with the enterprises, we work with the 501c3 operations in Red Lake. I mean, everybody, I kid you not, everybody knows what voc rehab does. And just getting all of the directors, tribal directors of other programs, we provide really good clients to them. They know that we do the UAs, we do the counseling follow along. We provide them with the support that they need to make sure that they they maintain employment, and we provide really good people out there. So a number of the programs want to work with us because it seems like human capital is in such huge demand for tribes, and that's what we do. We work. There's more collaboration with other programs that we can work with. It's much greater now than it ever has been in the past.
That's great, Connie. And I know for us too, we've often existed in silos here in terms of programmatic silos. And often that's due because we were funded through a lot of different grants. And sometimes that doesn't, everybody was worried about their own grant, not so much as the interaction. But I've seen that too, Connie, this new kind of other people reaching out to us as well and more opportunity for collaboration, and people aren't hiding behind confidentiality anymore. They're stepping up and saying, we're actually serving the same people. Let's do it together better.
And the model programs that we have in Red Lake, okay, like we had, I don't know if any other tribes are dealing with drug epidemics, but we declared a war on drugs. And we have, at the executive level, the tribal chairman assigned certain directors to a 3-day response team. I was on that 3-day response team. And the work that we have, like with law enforcement, the courts, IHS, including the pharmacy, chemical health program, family and children's services, and the school district people, all working together to pull all of our resources together to fight this drug epidemic. We have, to this day, we have pharmacy that comes in and does Narcan training, because we're not only talking about maintaining sobriety, we're talking about having the capacity to be out in the community and save lives, because people are ODing out on the street. Okay, we've got here in our office, we also have had to get CPR training because of the huge demand. I became an instructor, an American Red Cross instructor, so that we're able to provide CPR training. That's how huge the demand is. Okay, and then we have a AED machine right by the entrance. We contacted emergency personnel, so they know that if they get a call here, because of the number of people that are here from like general public that are in this building, they know exactly where the AED machine is at. You know, it's like some of the things that other people don't even think about that are happening here in Red Lake, and we all pull together and just really support each other. We now have new centers in every district, community centers where we hold our services. We are working more in the cultural respect as far as native healers and sweat lodges. I go into sweat every week. We have native healers coming in from Canada, fully supported by the tribal council. And I had to take some time off because of the hurt that I feel because of the number of people that we're losing. We're really fighting hard this drug epidemic, you know, so that's one of the greatest challenges I've ever had.
Thank you for sharing that, Connie. I think I think all of us have been impacted in some ways. I'm wondering if anybody else wants to talk about maybe some changes they've made in their program or different ways they've addressed the need for different services because of the opioid and other drug epidemics going on in Indian country.
That's not even talking about the suicides. It's another whole issue.
Yes.
It's really difficult, people, and you know, the more opportunity that we have to connect with other programs like this, I strongly endorse that. I mean, we do that at the local level, so you don't hear much from me, but believe me, I'm out there working. And if I come across any really ideal programs, I get a hold of people that are connected with TNR, and I do let them know about programs that I find out here. So it's not like a total disconnect. And I know the challenges of every director out there, and I'm not kidding you. I keep you all in my prayers.
Thank you, Connie.
Yeah, Connie, I've always appreciated, for those of you that access the listserv, Connie has always been one of the most frequent responders and very thoughtful and detailed responses sometimes to the questions. And I think that's indicative, Connie, of how much you care and how much that you're willing to help other programs, because we have each other to call on. And I guess that's something we should keep telling other programs, that we're all here for each other and are willing to share about what we do and how we address certain issues and problems.
And those things that nobody else, oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. When we had our school shooting up here in Red Lake, the support that we received from KNR to this day, it can bring me to tears. I mean, the support that you have through the KNR organization is tremendous. I mean, rely on that. They're free to give information to anybody who asks for it. Just put it on the listserv and you'll get a most professional response every time.
I have a question about this question or this discussion point. One of the things that when I first started as a director, we didn't have a database. And I was wondering, you know, when we're talking about reporting to RSA and monitoring, and our tribes also want to know the numbers, and being able to respond to the goals and objectives and what, you know, those outcomes that they're looking for. And those that don't have a database and they're still, you know, counting what we used to call back when, you know, fingers and toes and that sort of thing. What have been some of your challenges in reporting, either the executive summary, or, you know, getting the information on that executive summary from your financial department, which is also a budget item, not being able to report the numbers, not being able to report on time? Anybody want to share any of their experiences? Pluses are, you know, there's a good side too, you know, there's the plus side. Oh yeah, we have a database and we're reporting on time. We have a lot of people on the line here that we'd really love to hear from. So please jump in there. We want to hear your voices.
This is Ruby.
Hi, Ruby.
I know from my experience when I first came on in 2015, I actually had to learn data ops. There was no training on it, of course, and good thing I knew about Excel base. However, when we were doing our, you know, seemed kind of redundant to you're having you know, your staff put in this information, but if they don't put the, you know, actually stay on top of it and put everything in, you're not going to get your numbers that you expect. And in turn to that, then you have to go and pull files and, you know, and more time pulling, right? So now it's a lot simpler because not only that I train other individuals, everything is being inputted correctly, so we can actually have numbers on target with everything. And then we work with our accounting, of course. But before it was crazy. But now it's pretty good, you know. And I'm the one who does the auditing on the files to make sure that everything's on target with our protocol with RSA, of course. This is like new to me, like with the grant management. That's why I chimed in today, because I really want to know the ins and outs, you know, because I did do grant writing for a little nonprofit school, which I was very successful in getting, you know, money for them. But this is like a different realm for me. It's like I just recently just got what the first proposal was, and like I think an individual saying, you know, that when she came aboard, it was basically like that's really high expectations of, you know, for a grant. And but unfortunately, you know, I'm not the grant writer here, but there was a lot of things on there like service to groups. That was my main thing. Is I've been really actually pulling that policy up and going on and looking at the CFRs and, you know, everything, because you know, we really need to utilize that service to groups, you know, to help our tribal members, because I know that I really want to have computer classes going on here to help our tribal members, not only with their GET, but, you know, to actually get online and do online classes through colleges. And but I don't know if anybody can help me out there. I'm probably going off topic here, but
you're right on topic.
okay, to find out, the services per group and how I'm going to utilize and do a proposal to have my director put it into the project officer. And but I think it's very important, for our tribal members to actually have a purpose and actually, I have some that are only finished 8th grade. That to me is blowing my mind, because that should never happen, And so I'll get off of that one. My next thing was, was about the substance abuse and everything. As I was explained to my director, I said, until you look at the whole unit of the, environmental factors that's going on, you're going to have that rotating door again. Throw in rehab, 30 days. 30 days is nothing. That's a vacation. You see what I'm saying? Then they get released and they come back into their home environment, which was the factor that, got them in the drinking mode, because there's other individuals that have the substance too. So it's like a vicious cycle. I was telling her that, what can the tribe do in order to get the individuals who are crying out for help with their substance abuse? Where's the psychological evaluations? Are they self-medicating? Or there is so much trauma at home, they just give up. There's no hope for them. And that breaks my heart, because, I'm pretty much an outsider, but I look and, I see everything. And so, I mean, that's the thing, is that, we really have to look at the whole environmental factor. What do they have? What do they have going? Like I said, we could be having these classes here, and really, having tribal members come in here, even ones who are working that wants to improve themselves. There's so much potential within the tribe. It's just figuring out how to utilize that potential and to get tribal members, whole, healthy, and grounded back to the Creator and the earth. So anyway, I'll get off my high horse. I'll get off right now.
Ruby, those are very thoughtful points, and I think a good summary of what many people experience. And we don't operate in a vacuum, and our people don't live in a vacuum, and they don't,
right.
And I think that whole service, that would be an excellent topic for another talking circle, as many of the topics that people have brought up today. We're just on the tip of the iceberg here, and yes, it's all interrelated.
Yeah.
I do recommend, though, the native healing component, and also the sweat lodges for people that are having significant substance abuse, chemical health issues. It's starting to work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Christopher, Spokane Tribe. So I'm still kind of new, but what I've been doing with each report, I take notes about, here's what I learned from the last time. I put those in all of the every report cell, so that I can in the next year do it correctly. So I've made a lot of mistakes. My very first report, I think, was due 2 weeks after I first started. I didn't even have any idea what I was doing. Secondarily, a challenge we have is we've got all of our VR counselors are relatively new, and getting them trained on data ops, getting them proficient enough than me running reports to be able to do something, with it is a little challenging, because there's a lot of empty cells, empty data. So then we still have to go back and do the, hand counting, and that just takes a lot of time. But I always have it in my calendar that I need to be working on getting that up to date, through the month of October. I like to have my reports done like a month in advance, so that if I find any problems, I've got time to correct them. That first one was really extra challenging, and I had me and one VR counselor here all day on a Saturday cranking that thing out. But anyhow, that's been my experience.
Sounds like you had trial by fire there, Christopher. It does get better. You know, we use data ops, and we've had, you know, that helps in terms of, but it's the counselors that provide the services that need to keep that accurate and up to date. And if it's not, it's, you know, it's hard to use it in an accurate way. So we'll move on to question 4. I think discussion point 4.
Slide number 10.
Okay, here we are. Whoops. This is 11, I think. Okay. Discussion point 4 again kind of refers back to the budget. And it has, how does RSA know what we're doing? And they kind of count on that by our reports, but they're only like once a year, except for year 1, when they're 6 months. But how they kind of monitor us is they do the monitor our drawdown pattern, the federal system.
I'm sorry. This is Suzanne. Oh, Daryl.
Yeah, the same thing, Suzanne. If just announcement to the group, if you can put your mics on mute while Carol's speaking, we're picking a lot of echoing going on. Thank you.
Okay, so everybody's on mute. We won't get any responses. There it is. Okay. So we're, I'm still getting the echo, but we're looking at like the.
Oh.
Okay.
There we go.
Hello. All right. Like we'll hear from our project officers about their monitoring our drawdowns, and that's how they look at it. If we're not drawing down our budget, the accounting office draws down funds from the federal government according to our grant proposal. And if those aren't being done regularly and with precision, then RSA thinks we aren't spending our money. And that's how they monitor what we're doing. And that is pretty critical, especially this time of year when I know I've received, August is my project officer, and I received a thing like, oh, we're looking at, it's like 75% time in the year and you're not at 75% of your drawdowns. And, you know, they're doing that earlier in the year. And then we have time to make some corrections, or if we're not going to be able to spend down, is to work with them on a spending plan. And I'm wondering how that works for other people and if there's any issues with that. And I know there's some issues with sometimes the project is spending the money, but it's not being reflected in the drawdowns. And if anybody would like to talk a little bit about some of their experiences with the budget process.
Hi, this is Shelley. I know when accounting did not do our drawdowns, cost me $50,000. Then to try to do catch up, I overspent the next year, so it's you're suffered throughout 3-4 years. I don't know. Looking for advice on how to do it. It's like we even gave them a schedule and asked them to work with us, but it's like we know what we need to do, but unfortunately people within the tribal are not on the same page with us, so it makes it really hard to do what we need to do.
It really kind of ties your hands, Shelley, I know, with providing services and spending money if you don't have accurate information.
Yeah, I mean, I keep AIVRTTAC in my records. It's like, you know, I'm getting emails when you get them from August and you say, and you have this, and it's like, no, I don't. They just haven't did the drawdown yet. So, I mean, it makes it kind of hard for you to justify. You know, I'm keeping track in office, but that means nothing to them. They want to see it, you know, the drawdowns from the G5. So that's the issues that I'm going through.
Does anybody have problems communicating with their accounting department to even know that they're, or do you have to keep asking them, are they doing their drawdowns? What is the kind of like the communication between you and the financial department?
This is Connie in Red Lake, and we have an assigned accounts manager at the tribal council who takes care of everything for Voc Rehab. But because of the because of the system that we have, we see the same information as it's being recorded, you know, or as it's being entered. So we're both viewing the same information. There isn't any time lag, like you have to wait until we update this thing next week. Everything is like up to date, like now. I see it and they see it, and they send me the information on when they're sending their requests into Department of Education. They send me a pink copy of that. I don't need G5 read-only access because our accounts people are like a godsend. They just take care of all of that for me. So I have no problem at all.
That's awesome too. Once you get to that point, I know I'm at that point with our accounting department right now, but it hasn't always been that way.
Right.
But it is such a huge relief and kind of that burden of not knowing where you are spending wise. And we used to have to keep all our own accounts and then try to, you know, it just was kind of a crazy way to do business. And now it's like, it's not a worry, but it is, I think with the accounting department and with our tribal council, I have found that it's a constant, ongoing education that needs to be done. Even though we've had the program here for many years, it's like there's new people, and there's, you know, it's like I have to keep, you know, explaining what does eligibility mean. Sometimes people are like, well, why can't you do this for this person? And, you know, I'll get a call from a tribal council member, for example, and it's, you know, I think that others have that experience as well. This kind of constant kind of education. Maybe I've said it 10 times, but I'll say it 12, you know, that kind of explain what we're about and what we do.
Yeah, Carol, I meet with the tribal council every year in December and give them an update on the prior year and tell them what we're going to be doing for the next year. And it's like, but you know, at first it was like that wasn't enough. So I've kind of figured out what they need to hear and what they don't need to hear as far as what our plans are, what our objectives are, what our numbers were. And I think they just finally come to the conclusion that, okay, Voc Rehab knows what they're doing. Let's just let them do what they have to do. It took a while to get to that point, but we are there.
One thing that it might be a suggestion for some of you that I did is I was, you know, at a tribal council meeting, which I go to every tribal council meeting, so that isn't like an unusual event. But I had some questions came up about Visions, our Voc Rehab project, and then we broke for lunch. And I came back after lunch, and I had, you know, I had the laws, I had the regulations, I had CFR, I had my grant proposal, I had this stack of, you know, like a foot high of documents, and I just put on the table, and I just said to him, I don't make this up. This is what I have to follow to administer this program in a good way, okay? And this is what accounting helps me with, and this is what a legal department helps me with. And it really, I think that visual was really helpful to people. They told me I should get a wagon that I could cart my stuff around in. So anyway, John, how are we doing on time?
We have about 14 minutes left.
Okay, so I had 6 discussion points. The other points just had to do with that, you know, the federal regulations and the assurances that we sign and agree to as part of the grant proposal, and all those statements that when you look at your grant proposal, or if you're writing a grant proposal, that need to be signed and the tribe needs to agree to, that's all part of what we have to do to run a compliant program. And it's not, as some people have shared, it's not always easy to make a change, but there are ways of doing that that I know we've been able to adjust by working through amendments to our grant proposal. And sometimes that's easier to do when you're looking at funding for the next year. If you want to make a change, like this would be a good time right now. And the other point, discussion point 6, is also about communication. And I know there's been a lot of frustration expressed by some programs, particularly more recently when we have more programs and fewer project officers, that it's really hard to get that quick communication back that we did enjoy in the past. And it's still important though, and what RSA has suggested in terms of the project officers has suggested using email rather than even phone calls, because then you have a record of what you've communicated and their response, and so do they. And if you've asked questions, you know that's documented as well. So I think it's easier all the way around to keep that transparent more with, I think there's a group of four-wheelers outside my window right now. Sorry. Anyway, so that was just a couple of things I wanted to talk about, the importance of communication. But I'm thinking for the few minutes we have left, I just kind of like to open it up again to any questions that anybody might have about any aspect of grant management, or any suggestions you might have also for next topics, because we can see that the time goes really fast.
This is Christopher. So I just want to follow up on your 6th talking point there. And when I was new, the 2 things that I figured out were really problematic was we had an extremely high turnover rate. I think we had 200% turnover in the first 24 months of this program before I got here. And the second thing was the lack of communication with RSA, or the untimely responses. And I had measured early on that we were getting responses anywhere between 6 weeks and never. So one of the things I did was I just voluntarily decided I'm going to start giving a monthly report on our numbers and a narrative of what we've done. So every month I send Sonia a report, and that seems to have decreased the amount of time it's taking for her to respond to me, especially if I have something critical. So I get responses from her anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks. I've learned to accept that that's the way it works, because they're overworked just like we are. And you know, we had one particularly critical thing I needed to work with her on. She and I set up a time to do a conference call, and so I have felt like, you know, because we're communicating with them on a relatively frequent basis about what we're doing, that puts us in a different light than we might otherwise be in, and that seems to have helped.
Great, thank you for sharing that. That's a very, very proactive thing to do, and it probably helps you grant management-wise just to do that monthly report. Anyone else? I do see a question on the chat too from Gail, something about match requirement. I'm not sure. There is a match requirement that you agree to in your grant application.
Yeah, she might.
And there is a process to apply for a waiver of that if there's a reason why that your tribe can't afford to make that match, and that match can be in funding or resources or staff time or in-kind kinds of things as well. So I'm not sure, but
Gail mentioned that for future conversations, the match requirement.
Okay.
That might have been one.
Maybe that contributes to that level funding and having less resources maybe 2, but that would be a
Right.
good topic.
Well, and
Any
the difference
other
between,
suggestions?
yeah, the difference between money and in kind and how that works out. That's a good question. Thank you, Gail.
There is too. This is Connie. There's a calculator on the DOE website that'll tell you exactly how much match you need to come up with. It's a calculation that troubles me to this day, so I really appreciate that little calculator.
I think too, there's people that had questions about, concerns about too, writing their grant proposal for this year, and I guess in terms of, you know, if you have a current grant and you're writing for your next grant, the best thing you can do and way to prepare is, you know, run a compliant program and have that information available that you can use to explain how all the changes you've made and how you've reached your goals and objectives, and that is, you know, things that you do meet in terms of outcomes for employment for participants, and as you write your next application. But I know that's a topic too that several people have asked about in other forums as well, about some assistance with the grant writing application process. But it's a lawnmower, it's not a four-wheeler, sorry. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know, John, if you want to move on to, I know you have some things that you want to handle toward the end here.
Yes.
Or Daryl, or
Yeah, I'll jump in. This is Daryl. Well, thank you very much, Carol. Let's do a silent sign language applause, shaking your hand. So imagine that going off. Thank you for facilitating the conversation. Thank you to the AIVRTTAC community for participating and asking questions and sharing your knowledge and ideas. This is a first successful talking circle, so we appreciate the support. Moving forward, what we would like to do is share an AIVRTTAC resource with you titled Creating Your Own AIVRTTAC Program Overview. For those of you who are online with us, you can see that cover page here. Basically, what we have done is through our technical assistance that we provide to AIVRTTAC programs, we've learned that a very crucial part of our beginning steps with programs is to go back to the AIVRTTAC grant proposal. And as Carol had highlighted at the beginning of her facilitation, that grant proposal is your service contract. And oftentimes we have been finding that because of issues such as high turnover, you know, you being the new director into the program, because of budget issues, it's always important to go back and review your grant proposal because that is your service contract. And for that reason, you know, we found that doing this activity is helpful for the program and new staff coming on board for AIVRTTAC to do an orientation, but also for sharing with tribal department supervisors who may not necessarily be employed through the AIVRTTAC programs, but are overseeing what the program is about. So this is the template. It will be available for you through our website. John will be posting the web link to that through our website, so please look out for that. But if you turn to the next slide, John. So really, you'll see this as you open up the tool, but the purpose is really at looking at reviewing your AIVRTTAC grant proposal and creating your own PowerPoint. The content is then reviewed together as a team to reflect, to conduct progress checks, and to develop strategies to achieve your annual proposed goals and objectives on time and within the budget. So it's a do-it-yourself guideline. We provide a template for you through this tool, and basically you need just your copy of your AIVRTTAC grant proposal, take the information from that out, and then share it with your staff and use it as an orientation, but also to help you strategize on an annual basis what steps you're going to take as a program to achieve your proposed goals and objectives. So please take some time to look at that online. The other thing for next steps, as I mentioned, this is the first talking circle. We have proposed to do this on a quarterly basis. Really, this is an opportunity for the AIVRTTAC community to come together. I really like that a lot of you were taking the initiative to share some of your ideas that work for you, but also to ask questions for things that you're unfamiliar with. Understanding that the AIVRTTAC communities come together and that we have various levels of experience. This is your community, and we will help to create an opportunity for you to talk about the subjects that are important for you on a quarterly basis. The link will be found on our website. Again, John will share that. The last thing that we would like you to do is, of course, we want to learn about how effective this venue of sharing information is helpful to you. So we've created a web link. Those of you online, if you look at the chat box, if you could click on that link that John had shared, to complete the evaluation of the talking circle. Those of you who are on the phone, Kelsey will be emailing a link for you to complete via your email. Again, part of the recommendations is for asking you to provide any activities or topics to discuss during the next talking circle. Thank you very much for your participation, and you all have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Language.
Thank you.